The series begins with Lee Goon, a handsome young man and talented athlete who was once a rising star in the national tennis team. Just as he was about to win an important match, a sudden accident forced him to save his younger brother, Lee Sin. Because of this, Lee Goon was seriously injured and had to abandon his dream of becoming a national tennis player. After the accident, Lee Goon's life took a sharp turn. His family decided to send him to live with his grandmother in the village, while Lee Sin was groomed to carry on his older brother's talent. As his parents drove away, Lee Goon desperately chased after their car, only to fall into the river and lose his cherished medal. This event left him feeling broken, deepening his sense of failure. 15 years later, Lee Goon is now an adult with a troubled personality. He struggles with low self-esteem, guilt, and bad luck, constantly haunted by memories of being cast aside as an athlete. Meanwhile, his younger brother has grown into a successful and handsome tennis player. To make things worse, people around him, including his family, often look down on him, pushing Lee Goon further into despair. In his daily life, Lee Goon works as Lee Sin's manager, but his family often treats him more like a servant. One day, while traveling home on a plane with his family, Lee Goon meets a beautiful and smart doctor named Kyung, who is known for being a perfectionist. When Lee Goon tries to order a drink from a flight attendant, he speaks awkwardly, making him look a bit foolish. At that time, Dr. Kyung notices this, as she is working on a research paper about how painful memories can cause mental health issues. Interestingly, Lee Goon shows signs of low self-esteem, fitting the description of someone affected by painful memories. After the plane lands, Lee Goon is tasked with carrying many suitcases for his family. While doing so, he accidentally bumps into Dr. Kyung, causing their luggage to get mixed up. Dr. Kyung is a well-known doctor at a large hospital in Korea. She is often called the Ice Princess because of her cold and serious attitude. She is a perfectionist in everything she does and is currently researching how to erase bad memories, using a lab mouse for her experiments. Dr. Kyung believes that removing bad memories can improve people's mental health. Her research is very important to her because she will present it to top professors. She also takes great care of the lab mouse she is studying. In the middle of her busy research, Dr. Kyung realizes that her suitcase was swapped with a man named Lee Goon. She tries to call him, but he ignores her, which leaves her feeling quite frustrated. Lee Goon's job as Lee Sin's manager isn't always smooth. Every day, Lee Goon gets looked down on by those around him. His confidence almost returned when a young athlete recognized him and called herself a true fan. But just as Lee Goon felt hopeful, his boss embarrassed him in front of the girl, crushing his spirit even more. To make things worse, the old injury in his hand started acting up again, forcing Lee Goon to visit Dr. Kyung for treatment. When Lee Goon received treatment from Dr. Kyung, it didn't make him feel any better. Dr. Kyung's blunt attitude often made him feel even smaller, especially when she said that his pain was fake. Her words hit hard because deep down, Lee Goon knew she was right. He was struggling to let go of the painful memories that haunted him, leaving him too afraid to face his first love. Feeling defeated, Lee Goon walked home slowly. Later, he got a message on his phone from Dr. Kyung, apologizing for her harsh behavior. She told him he could come to see her anytime. It was only then that Lee Goon realized Dr. Kyung was the owner of the suitcase he had accidentally swapped. Dr. Kyung also figured out that Lee Goon was the person who had her suitcase because his name matched the patient she had just treated. Long story short, the day of the big presentation about erasing bad memories finally arrived. Dr. Kyung and her assistant carefully prepared the lab mouse that would be used for the research. Unfortunately, the precious mouse escaped. Dr. Kyung tried her best to catch it, but sadly, the mouse was run over by Lee Goon's car as he was coming to return Dr. Kyung's suitcase. The death of the valuable mouse made Dr. Kyung furious. She even shouted angrily at Lee Goon. Feeling guilty, Lee Goon bowed and apologized, offering to make it up to her in any way he could. Despite the setback, Dr. Kyung didn't give up. She went ahead with her presentation, even bringing the now-dead mouse as part of her demonstration. Dr. Kyung explained that she wouldn't stop her research. She believed that erasing bad memories was a good way to help heal people's minds. Dr. Kyung even mentioned that she planned to continue her research on humans. However, During the presentation, she received shocking news that Lee Goon had jumped into a river due to depression. She immediately felt guilty, thinking her harsh words might have driven him to do something drastic. When Lee Goon was taken to the hospital, Dr. Kyung worked hard to save him. Feeling responsible, she decided to use her memory-erasing research on him, hoping it would help him recover. The doctors agreed to perform surgery on Lee Goon, and they used Dr. Kyung's brain manipulation method to erase all of his painful memories. After several hours, the surgery was successful. But when Lee Goon woke up, Dr. Kyung was surprised when he hugged her and said that she was his first love, the person he had always wanted to meet. Dr. Kyung never expected that the effects of her experiment would affect her in this way. Now, Lee Goon had fallen in love with her, and he seemed genuinely happy after waking up. A few days after being in the hospital, Lee Sin and his parents, along with one of Lee Goon's close friends, came to visit. They seemed worried about Lee Goon's condition, but when his parents asked him questions, Lee Goon barely recognized any of them. It turned out that Lee Goon had forgotten many things. The only thing he remembered was the happy memory of winning a tennis match when he was younger. His parents asked Dr. Dong Chil about this, and the doctor explained that it was as if Lee Goon had been reborn. He could only recall happy memories like playing sports, friends, or the girl he loved. If he didn't remember his family, it meant that they weren't part of his happy memories. While in the hospital, Lee Goon's condition slowly improved. Ever since the surgery, his personality became cheerful and full of energy. Lee Goon even playfully teased Dr. Kyung when they got stuck in a small room together, almost getting caught by security when they came to check. On that day, Lee Goon's mother couldn't find him in his hospital room. It turned out that Lee Goon had left without anyone knowing. When he arrived home, he took a shower and changed his clothes, but instead of wearing his own, he put on his younger brother Lee Sin's clothes. Lee Goon even thought that Lee Sin's room was his own. Not long after, Lee Sin came home. He was shocked to see how much his older brother had changed, noticing that Lee Goon was acting more confident. Lee Goon firmly told Lee Sin to respect him as the eldest brother. Lee Sin let him take his room without arguing. His parents were also surprised and confused by how charismatic Lee Goon had suddenly become. Then, Lee Goon asked about his tennis career. Nervously, his parents told him that he had retired a long time ago and was now working as a manager. Full of confidence, Lee Goon quickly drove off to the hospital in Lee Sin's luxury car. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Dr. Kyung was talking to Dr. Dong Chil about the side effects of Lee Goon's treatment. However, Dr. Dong Chil couldn't do much to help. Instead, he suggested that Dr. Kyung pretend to be Lee Goon's first love to ensure the success of the experiment. In her office, Dr. Kyung thought about Lee Goon again and decided to take responsibility for monitoring his health. Dr. Kyung then received a call from her mother. It turned out that Dr. Kyung hadn't been home for a few days because she was so busy with work. While arguing with her mom over personal issues, suddenly, Lee Goon appeared in front of her, which surprised her. As usual, Lee Goon came to flirt and tease her. He handed her a bottle of warm drink and told Dr. Kyung that he cared about her and didn't want her to get sick. At the same time, Lee Sin was at a filming set with Se Yan. Lee Sin's boss came by and apologized for how he treated Lee Goon earlier, but Lee Sin ignored him. Se Yan then asked about how Lee Goon was doing. When she found out that Lee Goon was sick, Se Yan rushed to visit him. When they met, they talked for a long time, and it was clear that Se Yan still admired Lee Goon as her idol. She even gave Lee Goon a tennis racket as a gift. She asked him about his missing gold medal. Hearing the question, Lee Goon suddenly remembered pieces of his past. He started feeling a terrible headache and collapsed, forcing him to be admitted back to the hospital. The next day, Lee Goon's best friend came to the hospital and met with Dr. Kyung. He then shared Lee Goon's sad past with the doctor, revealing that the first love he wanted to meet had actually become his younger brother's girlfriend. This had deeply hurt Lee Goon, leaving him heartbroken and hopeless, which eventually led him to jump into the Han River to do something desperate. Dr. Kyung then went to visit Lee Goon's hospital room. There, she saw Lee Goon's mother crying and feeling regretful. There, she told Dr. Kyung about the night they had a big argument before Lee Goon tried to hurt himself. That night, Lee Goon had cried and shouted at his mother, saying that he had been deeply hurt by the unfair treatment he received. He felt tortured by how everyone looked down on him just because he wasn't a tennis player anymore. Lee Gun also said he was tired of always being compared to his younger brother, Lee Sin, who was much more successful. After that, Lee Gun left the house feeling very upset. Sometime later, Lee Gun finally woke up. He saw the tennis racket that Seon had given him and quickly went to the tennis court. There, Dr. Kyung met him. As usual, Lee Gun playfully teased her. But in a surprising moment, Dr. Kyung, determined to help Lee Gun heal, suddenly admitted that she was his first love. After hearing this, Lee Gun's behavior became even more playful, and he kept flirting and teasing Dr. Kyung whenever he had the chance. While Dr. Kyung and Dong Chil were checking on Lee Gun in his hospital room, Lee Gun openly told his parents that Dr. Kyung was his first love. His parents were shocked, but also very happy to hear this. They saw her as the person who saved their family. At that moment, Dr. Kyung stood frozen, feeling stuck because she was now unwillingly pulled into Lee Gun's life. Lee Gun continued to flirt with Dr. Kyung, even going so far as to propose to her. Feeling uncomfortable, Dr. Kyung told him that she already had someone she liked, and that person was Dr. Theo. Hearing this, Lee Gun felt a bit jealous, but he didn't give up. He was determined to win her heart no matter what. Meanwhile, at the police station, Lee Sin was being questioned by the police about the accident that had happened to Lee Gun. Lee Sin explained that after a family argument, he had followed Lee Gun. He saw Lee Gun sitting alone on the Han River Bridge. But when Lee Sin wasn't paying attention, Lee Gun suddenly jumped into the river. At that moment, Lee Sin quickly rushed to save his older brother, and soon after, paramedics arrived to help. After hearing Lee Sin's explanation, the police were still a bit suspicious about how he was able to save Lee Gun so quickly. Lee Sin stayed silent for a moment until his boss, who was also acting as his lawyer, arrived. The lawyer spoke privately with the police and asked them to keep the case secret from the public because Lee Sin was about to compete in an important tennis match that would represent the country. After considering many things, the police decided to release Lee Sin. At the hospital, Dr. Kyung was chatting with Dr. Theo. She thanked him for giving her an Eiffel Tower keychain, clearly happy with the gift. In contrast, Lee Gun was very jealous. To get Dr. Kyung's attention, Lee Gun ordered a lot of food for lunch. However, Dr. Kyung wasn't interested, while Dr. Theo happily ate Lee Gun's food without any shame and even asked Dr. Kyung to get him coffee. Seeing this, Lee Gun mocked Dr. Kyung for liking a guy who seemed indifferent and didn't treat her well. Meanwhile, Lee Sin was practicing tennis with his parents. But for some reason, he seemed a bit frustrated, especially when the lawyer came and told them that Lee Gun's accident wouldn't be made public. Hearing this, Lee Gun's parents felt relieved and promised to keep supporting Lee Sin until his spirit was restored. The next day, Lee Gun went to the office of Lee Sin's boss, the one who had insulted him before. But for Lee Sin's sake, the boss pretended to be friendly and offered Lee Gun a job as a data analyst at his company. He even promised to promote Lee Gun to manager if Lee Gun could convince Seon to sign a business contract. Afterward, Lee Gun returned to the hospital. There, he began following the head nurse around, trying to find out more about Dr. Theo. The nurse eventually revealed a secret that Dr. Theo was actually very stingy, which confirmed what Lee Gun had suspected all along. On the other hand, Dr. Kyung kept admiring the Eiffel Tower keychain that Dr. Theo had given her. When Lee Sin drove by very quickly, Dr. Kyung scolded him. But accidentally, Lee Sin dropped some tennis balls, and Dr. Kyung had to scramble to gather them all up. While putting the balls into the bag, Dr. Kyung didn't notice that she had dropped her keychain into Lee Sin's tennis ball bag. It turned out that Lee Sin had come to the hospital to meet her and ask for some medicine. From the way Lee Sin was carefully arranging things, Dr. Kyung suspected that he might be suffering from an anxiety disorder. Later that night, Lee Gun saw Dr. Kyung asleep at her desk. It seemed she hadn't gone home and was still working late. Lee Gun thought about kissing her, but he stopped when he saw her medical notes. Soon after, Dr. Kyung woke up and asked if Lee Gun had read them. At a dinner gathering, Lee Gun thanked Dr. Kyung, saying that he was grateful for her saving him when he fell into the river. Hearing this, Dr. Kyung felt sad because Lee Gun still believed she was his first love. But for the sake of the research, Dr. Kyung went along with what he said. The next morning at Dr. Kyung's house, She was surprised to find a strange girl sleeping next to her. Her mother explained that the girl's name was Sae Yan. Sae Yan was the daughter of her mother's friend who had just arrived from Italy. Sae Yan planned to stay with Dr. Kyung's family for a month. It wasn't hard for Sae Yan to become friends with Dr. Kyung because Sae Yan was very friendly. Back at the hospital, Dr. Kyung started to panic when she realized her keychain had gone missing. She began searching everywhere for it. And Lee Goon, noticing her worry, promised to go to Paris and bring her an even better Eiffel Tower keychain. One night, while Lee Goon was driving, he accidentally saw Dr. Theo in a car with a woman, and they were kissing. This made Lee Goon worry about Dr. Kyung. Later, as Lee Goon was driving around, he was shocked to find Dr. Kyung still outside, looking for her missing keychain. Quickly, Lee Goon got out of his car and gave her the keychain she had been searching for. But Dr. Kyung became upset, thinking he was just messing with her. As Dr. Kyung headed toward the parking lot, where Dr. Theo's car was parked, Lee Goon stopped her from going there. However, Dr. Kyung misunderstood and thought Lee Goon was trying to do something inappropriate. Just then, Dr. Theo arrived and scolded Lee Goon. Sadly, Dr. Kyung didn't realize that Lee Goon was trying to help her. Instead, Dr. Theo took advantage of the situation by asking her to take over his shift, and without thinking, she agreed. Seeing this, Lee Goon couldn't believe it. He questioned Dr. Kyung, but she got offended and warned him not to follow her anymore. Feeling hurt by her cold behavior, Lee Goon was deeply disappointed. The next day, Lee Goon snuck out of the hospital to meet with Director Hong. Once he arrived, Lee Goon immediately asked about the manager position he wanted. However, Director Hong told Lee Goon that he had to get Seon to sign a contract before he could become a manager. Lee Goon then went to see Seon, who was practicing tennis at the time. He offered her a deal to join Director Hong's agency, but Seon challenged him to a tennis match. She said if she lost, she would agree to join the agency. Not wanting to miss the chance, Lee Goon accepted the challenge. Unfortunately, within just a few minutes, he lost the match. Seon explained that she was not interested in the offer because she preferred to join a newer agency. Hearing this, Lee Goon suddenly got the idea to start his own agency. His first step was to offer Seon a contract to work with him. Meanwhile, during Lee Sin's tennis match, his mother demanded that he play perfectly. She fussed over every detail, including his shoes. Secretly, Director Hong asked Lee Sin to wear shoes from a sponsor to earn more money. Even though it hurt his feet and caused blisters, Lee Sin had to wear them. Despite the pain, Lee Sin managed to win the match. Tired of tennis, Lee Sin went to a convenience store. As usual, when he saw things out of place, he began organizing them neatly. There, he bumped into Dr. Kyung, who was looking for Lee Goon, who had run away from the hospital. While spending time with Dr. Kyung, Lee Sin's real personality showed that he was fragile and spoiled, something he hid from others to maintain his image as a strong tennis player. After spending the day with Dr. Kyung, Lee Sin's mood improved. Feeling cheerful, he even offered to run alongside her taxi to escort her. Dr. Kyung found his silly behavior funny and thanked him for helping her. Strangely, Lee Sin's heart raced as he noticed how kind Dr. Kyung was. After chatting for a bit, they parted ways. Later, when Dr. Kyung entered the hospital, Lee Sin received a notification about a credit card charge for beef that Lee Goon had bought without asking. At first, Lee Sin was upset, but after talking with his brother and hearing his story, Lee Sin realized he had been ignoring Lee Goon for a long time. Meanwhile, at Mrs. Cho's house, Sae Yin complained about how distant Dr. Kyung seemed, even though she just wanted to be close to her childhood friend, whom she considered a sister. Soon after, Mrs. Cho comforted Sae Yin, explaining that her daughter actually had a cheerful personality, but after going through a traumatic event, she became more withdrawn and found it hard to get close to others. The next day, after studying Seon's game from a video the night before, Lee Goon once again snuck out of the hospital. He went to meet with Director Hong, this time bringing Seon with him. At first, Director Hong thought Seon was there to sign a contract with his agency, but instead, she signed with Lee Goon's newly formed agency. Feeling tricked, Director Hong became angry, but Lee Goon didn't care. He was just happy to have Seon as his first athlete. Now, Lee Goon was fully determined to build his own agency. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung was having lunch with some hospital executives. One of her bosses asked about her research, That's when she suddenly realized she had forgotten the important documents, and she started to panic. She remembered that the research papers were still in the suitcase that got switched. Professor Han asked her to retrieve them immediately, as they were very important. Not wanting to see Lee Gun again, Dr. Kyung asked Lee Sin for help. However, Lee Sin was busy preparing for the tennis finals. Left with no choice, Lee Sin's mother gave Dr. Kyung the security code to their house so she could get the suitcase from Lee Gun's room herself. Wasting no time, Dr. Kyung headed to their house. Using the code Lee Sin's mother gave her, Dr. Kyung entered the house and quickly found the suitcase in Lee Gun's room. But just as she was about to leave, Lee Gun suddenly came home, surprising her. When Lee Gun opened the door, he found Dr. Kyung hiding behind the suitcase. Instead of being angry, Lee Gun was happy to see her. As usual, Dr. Kyung felt awkward and uncomfortable with his teasing. When she noticed Lee Gun's injured hand, she became worried and treated as wound. After that, she explained why she was there is to get the suitcase that had been switched. In another place, while Lee Sin was driving, he was suddenly surprised by the appearance of Sae Yan, his ex-girlfriend. She forced Lee Sin to go with her because she wanted to talk. At first, Lee Sin thought Sae Yan wanted to get back together, but it turned out she just wanted to ask about a bracelet she had left in his car. At the hospital, Lee Gun was chatting with a friend when he saw Dr. Theo getting close with another doctor named Yeo. Seeing this made Lee Gun annoyed. He tried to cheer up Dr. Kyung by giving her a tulip. Shortly after, he rushed to catch up with Dr. Kyung, who had just entered the elevator, not realizing that the tulip got caught and crushed in the door. When Lee Gun tried to give her the flower, he felt embarrassed because the tulip was ruined. To make matters worse, Dr. Theo and Yeo laughed at his failed attempt to cheer her up. The next day, Seon visited Lee Gun at the hospital. She reminded him that he needed to pay a fine to her mother, or else she would leave his agency. Hearing this, Lee Gun became a bit worried because he still hadn't found an investor. Not wanting to waste time, Lee Gun decided to cancel his counseling session to look for investors for his new agency. His decision made Dr. Kyung both annoyed and concerned, especially when she found out that Lee Gun was skipping his session and planning to go somewhere unknown. Worried about his safety, Dr. Kyung stopped Lee Gun's car and insisted on going with him to make sure he was safe. Feeling guilty, Lee Gun finally agreed to let his personal doctor accompany him. It turned out that Lee Gun took Dr. Kyung to a horse race. Curious about what Lee Gun was planning, Dr. Kyung followed him closely. She watched as Lee Gun impressed a rich man into becoming his investor by analyzing a horse. At that time, Dr. Kyung was secretly amazed by Lee Gun's skills. After spending the day together, Lee Gun invited her to dinner, but he was disappointed when she chose to meet Dr. Theo at a seminar instead. However, Dr. Theo had other plans due to his big ambitions. Without Dr. Kyung or the hospital directors knowing, he secretly performed brain surgery on Lee Gun to try a new experiment and take over Dr. Kyung's research project. Later, Lee Gun was called into the operating room. He asked a nurse where Dr. Kyung was, but they lied and said she had given her permission. Unaware of the truth, he had no choice but to let Dr. Theo start the surgery. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung was waiting for Dr. Theo at the seminar. Since he hadn't shown up, she decided to surprise him. But her plan was ruined when she overheard Dr. Theo talking to Dr. Yeo, revealing that the two of them were actually a couple. This shocking news left Dr. Kyung heartbroken. Feeling devastated, she sadly cleared away the candles and flower petals she had prepared for the surprise. In the hospital room, Lee Gun finally woke up. As soon as he did, he immediately went to look for Dr. Kyung in the seminar room. When he got there, he found Dr. Kyung looking really sad. Without knowing what had just happened, Lee Gun showed his concern for her, but she only pushed him away. Feeling hurt, Lee Gun left and went to confront Dr. Theo to warn him. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung, heartbroken, was wandering aimlessly in the street. Soon, Lee Sin saw her sad expression and quickly tried to cheer her up. While they were talking in the car, Dr. Kyung found a bracelet. Lee Sin realized it was the bracelet Sae Yan had been looking for. Still worried about Dr. Kyung, Lee Sin handed her a cup of coffee. Feeling grateful for her kindness, Lee Sin was happy and couldn't stop thinking about her all night, making it hard for him to sleep. The next day, Dr. Kyung returned to work at the hospital. She tried to focus on her duties and avoid being bothered by Dr. Yeon. But then, a problem arose when Lee Goon escaped from the hospital again. Frustrated with the situation, Professor Shin asked that Dr. Kyung be removed from the research and replaced by Dr. Theo. As a brain surgeon, Dr. Kyung had no choice but to accept the professor's decision. She soon realized that Lee Goon had been right all along, that Dr. Theo had just been using her. With that, she handed over her research papers to Dr. Theo. When Dr. Kyung arrived at the office, she accidentally found the surgery procedure documents that had been done without her knowledge. Shocked and upset, she became furious with Dr. Theo. To express her anger, she threw away the Eiffel Tower keychain he had given her. At Mrs. Cho's house, Sae Yan received a package from Lee Sin. It was the bracelet she had been looking for. Seeing the bracelet reminded Sae Yan of the misunderstanding she had before. At a hotel reunion event, Sae Yan saw Lee Sin. At first, she thought Lee Sin was her first love, but after dating for 3 weeks, she realized she was wrong. Now, Sae Yan was determined to find her real first love. Meanwhile, Lee Goon, who had escaped from the hospital, was celebrating buying a new apartment. However, when he found a reunion invitation that was dated the same day as his accident, he was shocked and tried to remember what had really happened. Eventually, Lee Goon realized there was something important he had missed. At the same time, Dr. Kyung was arguing with Dr. Theo and decided to leave the hospital. While on her way, it suddenly started raining heavily, so Dr. Kyung had no choice but to go to Lee Goon's apartment to take shelter. That day, Dr. Kyung's visit to Lee Goon's apartment was purely for doctor-patient matters, which made Lee Goon feel disappointed. From that moment, his attitude toward his personal doctor became cold. The reason Dr. Kyung came was because she had heard that Professor Shin planned to remove her from the research project. Determined, she asked the hospital director for permission to monitor her patient's daily life without keeping him in the hospital. For the success of her project, Dr. Kyung boldly asked Lee Goon if she could stay with him during the research. She even offered to be the personal doctor for the athletes at Lee Goon's agency for free. Although Lee Goon was skeptical at first, Dr. Kyung tried to convince him that her presence would be helpful, not just for the project, but for his well-being too. Remembering all the times he had been rejected, Lee Goon remained cold. He even tried to send Dr. Kyung away, but since it was raining outside, he eventually allowed her to stay for one night. The next morning, Lee Goon was surprised to see that Dr. Kyung was still at his apartment. They had a small argument, and soon after, he received a phone call from Seon. When Dr. Kyung heard that Seon was having health problems, she offered to help. Lee Goon refused, but Dr. Kyung insisted on going with him to the recovery center. Soon after, Dr. Kyung tried to assist Seon, but she declined, saying that Dr. Kyung wasn't experienced enough to handle athletes' conditions. Meanwhile, Lee Goon met with Seon's mother. She expressed her disapproval of her daughter joining his agency, which she thought was still too amateur. At Hansam Hospital, Professor Han called Lee Sin in to remind him to always take good care of Lee Goon, as even small memories could trigger all of his lost ones. Hearing this made Lee Sin nervous, and he started organizing things around him, a habit he had since childhood. Seeing this, Professor Han became suspicious. To change the subject, Lee Sin asked about Dr. Kyung. Elsewhere, Sae Yan was at the supermarket when she accidentally ran into Lee Sin. Their meeting led to a small argument, and Sae Yan immediately assumed that Lee Sin was following her. But he firmly denied it. Even though he didn't explain why he was there, Sae Yan still considered him a bother and told him to keep his distance. And Lee Sin, who didn't like Sae Yan either, was happy to stay away from her. As night fell, Lee Goon had dinner with his family. In the middle of the conversation, his father suddenly asked about Lee Goon's first love. Remembering how Dr. Kyung always rejected him, he said he no longer liked her. Curious about his older brother's first love, Lee Sin asked more questions about who the girl was. Lee Goon didn't answer right away and simply said their relationship was now only professional. When Lee Sin kept pressing, Lee Goon decided to leave and go back to his apartment. Before leaving, Lee Goon asked about the day he had his accident. Lee Sin quickly replied that Lee Goon had fallen down the stairs while everyone was inside the house. Upon hearing that, Lee Goon wasn't sure, especially after finding a suspicious reunion invitation. He felt something was off with Lee Sin. As Lee Gun started to recall the past, it made Lee Sin nervous. When Lee Sin looked at an old gold medal, he remembered the time he saved his brother from almost drowning in the Han River. Feeling anxious, Lee Sin hid the medal in a safe, as if trying to keep a secret from the past. Elsewhere, Dr. Kyung was with Sae Yan, who was drinking cans of beer. Tired from work, Dr. Kyung joined her and got very drunk, leaving Sae Yan struggling to take care of her. Instead of going home, she suggested they go to Lee Gun's apartment. However, because they were both so drunk, they ended up falling asleep in the parking lot, thinking it was a bedroom. The next morning, Sae Yan woke up first and went to the supermarket to buy some medicine. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung was still asleep in the same spot. Soon after, Lee Gun found Dr. Kyung looking helpless. He woke her up and gave her the keys to his apartment in case she needed to return later. That day, Lee Gun was preparing to meet some investors. Dr. Kyung eventually went home, took a shower, and changed her clothes. Shortly after, Sae Yan gave Dr. Kyung a lucky bracelet as a symbol of their friendship. For some reason, wearing the bracelet made Dr. Kyung feel more energized. Later, Dr. Kyung met with Lee Sin to ask for help in learning tennis techniques. He was thrilled to see the woman he liked and happily helped her practice until it was late. On her way back to Lee Gun's apartment, a suspicious man began following Dr. Kyung. Coincidentally, Lee Gun saw the man while stopping by a supermarket to buy a charger. Without Dr. Kyung noticing, Lee Gun chased after the suspicious man, who turned out to be Dr. Theo. Remembering Dr. Theo's bad behavior, Lee Gun wanted to confront him, but Dr. Theo changed the subject by questioning Lee Gun about his first love, leaving him a bit shocked. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung arrived at the apartment first and was surprised when a guest showed up, and it was Lee Sin that come to visit. Lee Sin was also surprised when he saw Dr. Kyung standing behind the door of his brother's apartment. Feeling anxious, he wondered if Dr. Kyung could really be Lee Gun's first love. When Lee Gun saw his brother visiting, he confirmed that Dr. Kyung was indeed his first love. Suddenly, the atmosphere became awkward as Lee Gun introduced Dr. Kyung as the personal doctor for athletes at his agency. Still unsure, Lee Sin asked again if it was true that Dr. Kyung was his brother's first love. Without hesitation, Lee Gun explained that Dr. Kyung was the girl who saved him when he almost drowned in the river, and that's when he fell in love with her. Lee Sin felt a bit disappointed, especially when Lee Gun touched Dr. Kyung's hand. Feeling uncomfortable, Lee Sin quickly said goodbye and left, followed by Dr. Kyung, who pretended to leave so it wouldn't seem like she was staying with Lee Gun. Once Lee Sin was really gone, Dr. Kyung returned to Lee Gun's apartment. And Lee Gun, who had just taken a shower, was shocked to see Dr. Kyung suddenly in his kitchen. Embarrassed, he tried to sneak into his room without being seen. On the other hand, Lee Sin came home late because he stopped to drink soju. His mother was furious when he arrived. However, instead of apologizing, Lee Sin, still tipsy, did something silly. His mother didn't know the real reason for his drinking was because he was heartbroken. At Mrs. Cho's house, Sae Yan was very upset because her parents had blocked her debit card. This made it much harder for her to continue searching for someone she really wanted to find. The next day, while walking down the street, Sae Yan spotted Lee Sin. She quickly approached him and asked for a ride to a certain place. At first, Lee Sin refused, but after being threatened, he reluctantly agreed and drove her to a village in Songnam. When they arrived, Sae Yan made Lee Sin help the villagers while she went off to look for someone. After some time, Sae Yan returned, looking disappointed because she couldn't find the person she was searching for. Seeing her sad face, Lee Sin teased her, which only made Sae Yan angry. Without thinking, she shoved Lee Sin into the water. Soaked and frustrated, he left the village, leaving Sae Yan behind. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung was with Lee Gun, who was visiting Seon at the hospital. Since Seon refused treatment from Dr. Kyung, Lee Gun found another doctor to help her. Even though they got the best doctor, Seon still acted rudely toward Dr. Kyung. Feeling useless as an athlete's doctor, Dr. Kyung looked downcast. On the way back, she didn't talk much. Then, Sae Yan called, asking to be picked up from Songnam village. Dr. Kyung wasn't sure how to get there, but Lee Gun offered to help, and the two of them went to pick up Sae Yan. On the other hand, Lee Sin, feeling guilty about leaving Sae Yan, decided to go back and pick her up. When she saw Lee Sin's car from a distance, she was overjoyed, realizing that he still cared about her. Then, Sae Yan quickly called Dr. Kyung to let her know that she no longer needed a ride, as she already had one. Seeing Sae Yan's strange behavior, Lee Sin became curious about who she was looking for. Sae Yan firmly told him that she was searching for her first love. From their conversation, Lee Sin learned more about Sae Yan. Feeling close to Lee Goon, Dr. Kyung shared a bit about herself, explaining why she always acted cold toward her patients. It turned out that Dr. Kyung had a traumatic experience. Her father, who was a kind psychiatrist, was tragically killed by one of his own patients. After this short talk, Lee Goon gave her a ride home. The next day, Lee Goon and Dr. Kyung attended Seon's tennis match. At first, Seon seemed nervous, but with some encouragement from Dr. Kyung and Lee Goon, she ended up winning the match with a strong score. After the match, Lee Goon met with an investor. The investor promised sponsorship if Lee Sin could be Seon's doubles partner. To satisfy the investor, Lee Goon promised he would try to get Lee Sin to join his agency. From a distance, Lee Sin secretly watched as Lee Goon and Dr. Kyung laughed and seemed close. Even though he didn't say it, Lee Sin felt jealous seeing his brother happy with his first love. On the other hand, Seon's mother thanked Lee Goon for helping her finally agree to let her daughter join Lee Goon's agency. While this decision made Lee Goon happy, it angered director Hong, who felt he had lost one of his talented players. After winning the match, Lee Goon and Seon went to a hotel to meet a new investor from Italy. With Dr. Kyung's help, Sae Yan also came along to work as a translator for Lee Goon. However, as soon as Lee Goon stepped into the hotel, faint memories of a bad event started coming back to him. He tried to ignore them and focus on the job. Dr. Kyung, as his work partner, came to support him. While waiting, Dr. Kyung was approached by one of Lee Goon's friends, who begged her to stop pretending to be Lee Goon's first love. Unbeknownst to them, Lee Sin overheard the conversation, which made him feel relieved, knowing he still had a chance to get closer to her. Meanwhile, Coach Bong became angry because he found out that Lee Sin was the reason behind Lee Goon's accident. He thought that if Lee Sin hadn't taken his brother's first love, Lee Goon might have had a better life. Not wanting to be blamed as a love stealer, Lee Sin defended himself, and a fight broke out between the two. Dr. Kyung quickly took Lee Sin away from the hotel to prevent the situation from getting worse. On the other hand, the Italian investor grew impatient waiting for Lee Sin. To buy some time, Sae Yan distracted the investor by teaching him how to make dalgona coffee. After leaving the hotel, Lee Sin calmed down with Dr. Kyung by his side. He then opened up about his true feelings, explaining that he never meant to take away his brother's first love. All Lee Sin wanted was for his brother to live a happy life after going through the project to erase painful memories. He also admitted he was relieved to find out that Dr. Kyung wasn't Lee Goon's first love. Back at the hotel, Lee Goon was worried and kept looking for Lee Sin. Luckily, Sae Yan and Seon were able to handle the investor well, and the business deal was finally signed. Even though they successfully gained a new investor, Lee Goon was still upset that Lee Sin had disappeared without any word. His phone calls to Lee Sin were ignored. In truth, Lee Sin was purposely ignoring the calls because he didn't want anyone to interrupt his time with Dr. Kyung. After the Italian investor left, Sae Yan was excited to receive her payment for the job. With her cheerful personality, she quickly became friends with Seon, though Lee Goon wasn't too fond of Sae Yan, finding her a bit too loud. When Lee Goon noticed that Sae Yan's bracelet was the same as Dr. Kyung's, he realized that Sae Yan was actually a close friend of Dr. Kyung. To his surprise, Sae Yan had fallen asleep in Lee Goon's car, even though he never offered her a ride in the first place. Soon after, Lee Goon sent a message to Dr. Kyung, asking her to come pick up Sae Yan. While waiting, Sae Yan and Lee Goon had a conversation, and Sae Yan felt like Lee Goon looked familiar. Lee Goon said that it wasn't possible since they had never met before. After Dr. Kyung and Sae Yan returned home, Sae Yan mentioned how sweet Lee Goon seemed, saying he was very thoughtful. Dr. Kyung quickly disagreed, saying that to her, Lee Goon was annoying and overly self-centered. Elsewhere, Lee Goon was still upset with Lee Sin for breaking his promise. Lee Sin apologized and explained that he didn't meet the investor because he was on a date. Annoyed by his brother's excuse, Lee Gun sarcastically said that any woman dating his brother must have terrible taste. Instead of getting angry, Lee Sin asked if Lee Gun still had feelings for Dr. Kyung. Not liking how curious his brother was, Lee Gun pretended to be busy tidying up his bed. The next day, Dr. Kyung waited for Lee Gun to continue their counseling session, which involved writing down his emotions in a diary. But once again, Lee Gun skipped the appointment. He preferred to spend his time looking for new investors. Frustrated by Lee Gun's behavior, Dr. Kyung reported it to the professor. To her surprise, she found out that Lee Gun had actually been writing in a diary regularly for the past 10 years. Elsewhere, Lee Sin was taken to the hospital by his mother for a medical checkup. During the visit, Dr. Kyung also asked Lee Sin about Lee Gun's emotion diary. Knowing how important the diary was, Lee Sin promised to find it. Meanwhile, Lee Gun decided to revisit a hotel, trying to uncover more about his past. When he arrived, he saw a Christmas tree frame, which reminded him of the reunion invitation from the night of the accident. The more he remembered, the more his wrist began to ache. Still curious, Lee Gun went to the police station. There, he discovered that his younger brother's name was listed as a guest at the hotel reunion. The accident that day didn't happen at the hotel, but at the Han River Bridge. Shocked, Lee Gun became certain that his brother was hiding a secret. At the same time, Lee Sin hurried home to search for his brother's emotion diary. However, the diary he found wasn't complete, as there was still one missing book. That missing diary was inside Lee Gun's suitcase, which had been swapped and was now in Dr. Kyung's room. Meanwhile, Sae Yan opened the suitcase and discovered Lee Gun's diary inside. After receiving a call from Lee Sin, Dr. Kyung invited Lee Gun to lunch. She did this to distract him and delay his return home. After spending the whole day together, they finally returned to the apartment. However, trouble arose when Lee Gun's parents suddenly came for a visit. Dr. Kyung had to hide and wait outside in the freezing cold. Meanwhile, after thinking about Seon's words, Lee Sin went to Director Hong to end his contract and join his brother's agency, hoping to see Dr. Kyung every day. When Lee Sin arrived at the apartment, he saw Dr. Kyung standing outside without shoes. He quickly offered her his shoes so she wouldn't get cold. But before she could put them on, Lee Gun came out, picked her up, and carried her inside. Lee Sin hurried to follow them, but was suddenly stopped by the arrival of Director Hong. Director Hong was angry and felt betrayed by Lee Sin for wanting to leave the agency that made him famous. He even threatened to reveal the truth that it was Lee Sin who pushed Lee Gun into the river. Unintentionally, Lee Gun overheard the conversation, causing him to feel a sharp pain in his head. Shocked by what Director Hong said, Lee Gun became confused and asked Dr. Kyung what had really happened. At first, Dr. Kyung didn't want to answer Lee Gun's questions, but she explained that everything was done for his well-being. However, her answer didn't satisfy Lee Gun, causing him to have a headache. Dr. Kyung quickly took him to the hospital. After a CT scan, the doctors found that Lee Gun's brain was in good condition, but the professor was unsure of the side effects from their research. Secretly, Dr. Theo was eavesdropping and planning something. When Lee Gun woke up, he kept asking about his past, but Dr. Kyung didn't say much. Just then, Lee Sin called and asked to be picked up from a bar. When Dr. Kyung arrived, she was shocked to find Lee Sin being beaten by two unknown men. Due to her trauma from past violence, Dr. Kyung had trouble helping Lee Sin. Thankfully, Lee Gun arrived just in time and managed to stop the two men. After the fight, Lee Gun suddenly fell asleep due to the sedatives from the hospital, while Lee Sin remained unconscious from being too drunk. Dr. Kyung had a hard time getting both brothers back to the apartment. The next morning, Lee Gun woke up and was surprised to see Lee Sin in his apartment. He had thought he would be alone with Dr. Kyung. After breakfast, the three of them watched TV together and saw Seon starring in a laxative commercial. Lee Gun suddenly remembered that Seon had another commercial to film, and he worried about missing it. Soon after, Lee Gun rushed to the filming location, but Seon was upset for no apparent reason. The director looked exhausted from dealing with Seon, who refused to film just because she hated the costume she had to wear. The director told Lee Goon that he would have to pay a penalty if Seon didn't finish the shoot. This situation happened because of director Hong, who accepted a sponsor deal when Seon was still with his agency, leaving Lee Goon to deal with the problem. At the filming site, Lee Sin ran into Sae Yan, who was working as a translator for his brother. They had a brief argument, as Lee Sin was worried about Sae Yan being around his brother. He then told Sae Yan to quit being a translator. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung found Seon hiding at a school after seeing her latest Instagram post. Dr. Kyung listened as Seon shared her feelings, explaining that she had been bullied by her friends. They teased her for starring in a commercial they thought was embarrassing, making Seon feel stressed and unhappy with her image. While waiting for Seon to return, Lee Goon met with the director of the laxative commercial, where he once again ran into director Hong. Since director Hong still had an official deal with Lee Sin, the commercial director decided to use Lee Sin as the temporary star, and Seon was at risk of being replaced. Lee Goon was disappointed by this decision, but it didn't last long, as Dr. Kyung managed to convince Seon to return to the set and finish the shoot. Since Dr. Kyung had helped solve the issue, Lee Goon invited her for a private dinner. However, the dinner was canceled when Lee Sin asked Dr. Kyung to meet him to give her Lee Goon's emotion diary. Before heading to the restaurant, Dr. Kyung decided to meet Lee Sin first. While waiting for Dr. Kyung, Sae Yan suddenly showed up and sat at the table meant for Dr. Kyung, even eating the food that had been prepared for her. Seeing Sae Yan's behavior, Lee Goon was not pleased. He checked his phone and saw a message from Dr. Kyung canceling their dinner plans, which left him disappointed, so he decided to leave. But when Sae Yan started talking about Dr. Kyung, Lee Goon sat back down, and they began discussing first loves. Hearing how much Lee Goon liked Dr. Kyung, Sae Yan was touched and admired his strong feelings. Curious about how Dr. Kyung really felt, Lee Goon asked Sae Yan for her opinion. Sae Yan replied that Dr. Kyung always worried about Lee Goon, which made him feel more confident. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung was still meeting with Lee Sin at a restaurant, where he had prepared a romantic dinner under the pretense of handing over Lee Goon's diary. Although Dr. Kyung didn't seem to enjoy the dinner, she became interested when Lee Sin started talking about his brother's childhood. Noticing her change in attitude, Lee Sin asked her how she truly felt about Lee Goon. Dr. Kyung responded that her care for Lee Goon was only for the sake of the research, which made Lee Sin feel relieved. He also reminded her that she wasn't his brother's first love, so there was no need for her to feel jealous. When they returned to the apartment, Dr. Kyung and Lee Goon decided to enjoy some snacks together, making up for their missed dinner. During their snack time, there was a cute and funny moment. So, while Lee Goon was about to drink from a can of beer, their noses accidentally touched, and they almost kissed. When Lee Goon fell asleep, Dr. Kyung found herself admiring his handsome face, and without thinking, she reached out to touch his cheek. Startled when Lee Goon suddenly woke up, Dr. Kyung quickly slapped him, pretending it was an accident to hide her embarrassment. That night, they did a lot of things together, including going to Seon's school to fix her desk, which had been damaged by bullies. Dr. Kyung felt happy being with Lee Goon and realized that she liked him more than just as a patient. In a spontaneous moment, she even gave Lee Goon a hug when he ran towards her. Lee Goon was surprised by the hug, and Dr. Kyung, feeling awkward, quickly left. The next day, there was a national tennis player meeting which was also attended by the Italian investor. Sae Yan was there as a translator. Both Seon and Lee Sin were present, and as the CEO of his agency, Lee Goon was required to attend too. He was supposed to go with Dr. Kyung, but because she was still embarrassed from the previous night's events, Dr. Kyung avoided Lee Goon and hid behind a poster. After the meeting with the Italian investor and coach ended, the selected athletes were required to go to the athletes' village by bus. However, Lee Goon decided to drive his own car. When he was about to invite Dr. Kyung to join him, Lee Sin arrived first and offered her a ride. This led to both Lee Goon and Lee Sin competing for Dr. Kyung's attention. Shortly after, Sae Yan appeared, also looking for a ride. She chose to go with Lee Goon since she often didn't get along with Lee Sin. Meanwhile, at Mrs. Cho's house, a foreign man arrived looking for Sae Yan. He turned out to be a bodyguard sent by her parents to bring her back. Since Sae Yan hadn't found her first love in Korea yet, she decided to hide from the bodyguard. And Mrs. Cho, unaware of the situation, gave the bodyguard the address of the athlete's village. Afterward, she called Sae Yan to warn her about the bodyguard looking for her. Sae Yan was shocked, and just as expected, the bodyguard soon arrived at her location. Not wanting to get caught, Sae Yan quickly gathered Lee Sin, Dr. Kyung, and Lee Gun into the car. She drove recklessly, almost hitting everything in her path. Seeing how scared Dr. Kyung was, Lee Gun hugged her to protect her. Dr. Kyung struggled to control her feelings, reminding herself that Lee Gun was supposed to be just a subject in her research. During the trip, Lee Sin asked to stop at a rest area and told Lee Gun to go buy some snacks. This was actually a trick by Lee Sin to get some alone time with Dr. Kyung. However, his plan fell apart when Sae Yan, without Lee Sin knowing, decided to stay and sleep in the car. Lee Sin mistakenly thought Sae Yan was Dr. Kyung. He happily drove off in the rest area, leaving both Dr. Kyung and Lee Gun behind. After a while, Dr. Kyung and Lee Gun realized they had left their wallets and phones in the car with Lee Sin. Lee Sin, still thinking he was alone with Dr. Kyung, was shocked when Dr. Kyung suddenly called him. Stranded, Dr. Kyung and Lee Gun had to try and catch up by taking a shortcut through the forest. On the way, Lee Gun asked why Dr. Kyung had been avoiding him. Embarrassed by the near kiss from the night before, she made up several excuses to hide her true feelings. Meanwhile, Lee Sin was trying to figure out how to help Sae Yan by contacting her bodyguard. He sent her location to Sae Yan's mother, so the bodyguard could come pick her up quickly. Lee Sin apologized for not being able to help Sae Yan find her first love. Hearing his apology, Sae Yan finally confessed that the person she had been searching for wasn't her first love, but her biological father. At that time, there was a bit of a disaster when Lee Sin got stung by a bee, causing him to pass out and making Sae Yan panic. She called for help, but since it was taking too long, she decided to suck the venom out of Lee Sin's body herself. When the medical team arrived, they praised Sae Yan for her quick first aid, which helped save Lee Sin from the bee sting. Shortly after, Lee Gun and Dr. Kyung arrived and suggested they all head back, but the car suddenly stopped because it had run out of gas. Luckily, Seon arrived just in time, and they all safely made it to the athlete's village. After dropping off Lee Sin and Seon at the athlete's village, Lee Gun took Dr. Kyung on a trip down memory lane to revisit places from his childhood. Lee Gun once again confessed his feelings for Dr. Kyung, telling her that even though she wasn't his first love, his feelings for her would never change. Caught up in the moment, Dr. Kyung and Lee Gun shared a kiss. However, the romantic moment was cut short when an old man suddenly appeared, angry because Lee Gun's car was blocking the road. With no choice, Dr. Kyung and Lee Gun returned to the car and decided to find a place to stay. Instead of a fancy hotel, they went to Lee Gun's grandmother's traditional house. Once there, Dr. Kyung learned more about Lee Gun's childhood. But as she tried to sleep, Dr. Kyung felt uncomfortable because it was too hot. She found it hard to control her thoughts, which started drifting towards imagining Lee Gun in a romantic way. It turned out that earlier, Dr. Kyung had accidentally taken some herbal stamina medicine that belonged to Lee Sin. Unlike Dr. Kyung, Lee Gun was feeling cold and even asked to trade blankets. A little while later, they both got scared when they heard a mouse. To calm down, they lay outside the house enjoying the beautiful night sky together. The next morning, as Dr. Kyung woke up, she secretly admired Lee Gun's face. Before they headed back to the athlete's village, Lee Gun surprised her with a bouquet of wildflowers he had gathered. At that time, Dr. Kyung blushed at his sweet and romantic gesture. When they arrived at the village, they were greeted by Sae Yan, who commented on how happy and refreshed they both looked. Meanwhile, at Hansam Hospital, Dr. Theo was sneaking around, stealing a flash drive that contained Lee Gun's brain development data. With this, he planned to take over the research project led by Dr. Kyung. Back at the athlete's village, Sae Yan always did her job well as a translator for the national team. Even though she often argued with Lee Sin whenever they met, she actually enjoyed her work. However, things were different for Lee Sin. This year, staying at the athlete's village made it hard for him to stay focused. He was constantly jealous whenever he saw his brother with Dr. Kyung. When director Hong offered Lee Sin a chance for an interview that could lead to an advertisement deal, Lee Sin turned it down right away. On the other hand, the The athletes' village gave Sae Yan new life experiences and excitement. But her happiness was threatened when her mother suddenly showed up, demanding that Sae Yan return to Italy and stop searching for her biological father. Unable to go against her mother's orders, Sae Yan felt powerless. Lee Gun overheard the conversation and decided to help Sae Yan. He explained that Sae Yan had a work visa contract that couldn't be broken, warning that if she left Korea, she could face prison for breaking the law. In the end, Sae Yan's mother agreed to let her stay in Korea a little longer. Sae Yan then asked Lee Gun to take her to a village where she could search for her father. She begged him, knowing she didn't have much time left to stay in the country. Meanwhile, since they hadn't seen each other in a while, Dr. Kyung went to meet Lee Sin. At first, he was upset because Dr. Kyung hadn't replied to his message the night before, but after she explained, he understood the situation. He realized that Dr. Kyung had many responsibilities to take care of. After talking with her, Lee Sin even agreed to do the interview, showing that he was ready to open up and share his experiences with the doctor. On the other hand, when Lee Gun arrived at his grandmother's village, he accompanied Sae Yan to search for her biological father. However, when a local man recognized Lee Gun and mentioned his troublesome childhood, memories started flooding back. As a taxi passed by, Lee Gun remembered the painful moment when his family left him, and he was still injured. Back at the athlete's village, after her talk with Lee Sin, Dr. Kyung sat alone, reflecting on his advice about being honest with her feelings. Even though she had fallen in love with Lee Gun, she still felt guilty for lying to him, pretending to be his first love. Shortly after, Lee Gun ran up to her, and without hesitation, he hugged Dr. Kyung tightly, saying he didn't want to lose her. Just after finishing his interview, Lee Sin was looking for Dr. Kyung. But when he stepped outside, his heart sank as he saw Dr. Kyung and his brother hugging. The next day, Dr. Kyung visited Sae Yan, who had fallen ill after taking laxatives given by Seon. Not long after, Dr. Kyung received a call from Sae Yan's mother, asking to meet. During the conversation with Sae Yan's mother, Dr. Kyung was shocked to learn that Sae Yan was actually Lee Gun's real first love. This made Dr. Kyung upset with Lee Sin for lying to her all this time. Coincidentally, Lee Gun had been waiting and saw Dr. Kyung walking by. Curious about where she was going, Lee Gun decided to follow her. At a swimming pool, Dr. Kyung confronted Lee Sin about Sae Yan. However, Lee Sin showed no guilt and even forced a kiss on Dr. Kyung just as Lee Gun arrived. Seeing his brother mistreat Dr. Kyung, Lee Gun became furious. He grabbed Lee Sin's collar, but Lee Sin pushed him into the pool. As Lee Gun struggled in the water, memories from his childhood and the accident at the Han River came flooding back. Noticing that Lee Gun wasn't moving, Dr. Kyung quickly jumped in to save him. When Lee Gun regained consciousness, the first person he saw wasn't Dr. Kyung, but Sae Yan. Surprised to see Sae Yan in front of him, Lee Gun felt awkward. He immediately asked where Dr. Kyung was. Sae Yan explained that Dr. Kyung was working late at the hospital, so Sae Yan was the one taking care of him for now. Meanwhile, at Mrs. Cho's house, Dr. Kyung wasn't working late. In reality, she had taken a few days off to reflect and calm down. After finding out that Sae Yan was Lee Gun's true first love, she didn't feel like she had the right to interfere in Lee Gun's life anymore. She believed it was best to step back, especially after reading Lee Gun's emotion diary that had been left in her room. At that time, Dr. Kyung felt that she should no longer be a part of his life. Even when Lee Gun tried calling her, she purposely kept her responses short and distant, leaving him confused. There, he started to wonder if he had done something wrong without realizing it. At the same time, Lee Sin visited Mrs. Cho's house, bringing many gifts. Mrs. Cho was surprised to see the famous tennis player at her home. During an unexpected moment, Lee Sin's clothes got splashed with tomato juice, so Mrs. Cho offered him some of Dr. Kyung's late father's clothes to change into. Feeling more confident, Lee Sin believed he was being accepted as part of Mrs. Cho's family. He even asked for permission to wait for Dr. Kyung to come home, showing his sincerity about getting closer to her. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung went for a walk to clear her mind. The fact that Sae Yan was Lee Gun's first love left her heartbroken. Dr. Kyung was torn, unsure of how to handle the situation. Back at the apartment, Sae Yan was still taking care of Lee Gun. Even though her caregiving methods were a bit odd, Lee Gun's condition slowly improved. After making porridge, Sae Yan prepared a drink mixed with honey. However, Sae Yan's habit of drinking alcohol was hard to shake. No matter where she was, she always had a drink in hand. Unfortunately, on that day, she drank too much and became too dizzy to properly care for Lee-gun. Instead of helping, Sae Yan ended up sleeping all day because she felt nauseous and had a headache. This time, it was Lee-gun's turn to take care of her. Concerned about her unsteady walking, Lee-gun didn't hesitate to carry Sae Yan on his back and take her home. At Mrs. Cho's house, Lee-sun spent a lot of time with Dr. Kyung's family. During a moment alone, he found his brother's emotion diary and quickly took it. That evening, Lee-sun even played a game of snakes and ladders with Mrs. Cho. Later, when Dr. Kyung returned home and saw Lee-sun there, she didn't seem happy to see him. She asked Lee-sun to talk outside. Seeing Dr. Kyung upset, Lee-sun tried to joke around, but this time Dr. Kyung was truly angry and disappointed with him for lying to her. Lee-sun explained that he lied because he really liked her and wanted to have a serious relationship with her. However, it was clear that Dr. Kyung wasn't interested in him at all, and she firmly rejected his feelings. After talking for a while, Dr. Kyung told Lee-sun to go home, as there was nothing more to discuss. This scene unfolded right in front of Lee-gun, who had just returned after taking Sae Yan home. Lee-gun felt disappointed with Dr. Kyung, thinking she had lied about being busy when she was actually spending time with Lee-sun. Realizing his brother had misunderstood, Lee-sun took advantage of the situation. Without feeling guilty, Lee-sun said that he and Dr. Kyung had spent the whole day together. Dr. Kyung didn't respond to Lee-sun's comment, as she was focused on checking on Sae Yan, who was still asleep on Lee-gun's back. Dr. Kyung then took Sae Yan inside the house. At that time, Lee-sun was satisfied seeing his brother consumed with jealousy. But as Lee-gun was about to leave, he challenged Lee-sun to a tennis match. Confident in his skills, Lee-sun underestimated Lee-gun's abilities. However, it was clear that Lee-gun's tennis skills were not as bad as Lee-sun thought. During the game, Lee-gun reminded his brother about the bracelet that had fallen into the Han River with him. Hearing this, Lee-sun was shocked, realizing that Lee-gun might be starting to remember the accident that night. After the match, Lee-sun became anxious and secretly burned Lee-gun's emotion diary. However, someone mysterious who had been following him all along witnessed the act. The next day, while at the athlete's village, Lee-sun received a message from an unknown person, showing a picture of the burned emotion diary. Curious about who was behind the threats, Lee-sun quickly arranged to meet this person at a nearby coffee shop. Meanwhile, Lee-gun was trying to uncover the details of his accident at the police station. After gathering enough information, he requested public CCTV footage from the patrol division. Just as he got the footage, Manager Bong called to inform him that Lee-sun had run away from the athlete's village without permission. Bong urged Lee-gun to find his brother quickly, as Lee-sun and Seon could be removed from the national team if he didn't return. Before searching for his brother, Lee-gun took a moment to watch the CCTV footage. At a coffee shop, Lee-sun anxiously waited for the mysterious person who had been stalking him. Director Hong was helping him to catch the culprit. However, the stalker realized what was happening and quickly ran away to avoid being caught by Hong's men. At that time, Lee-sun tried to chase the stalker, but they were too fast and he couldn't uncover their identity. After watching the CCTV footage, Lee-gun left in his car, filled with anger. The next day, shocking news spread in the media, claiming that Lee-sun had tried to harm Lee-gun. This rumor caused Lee-sun to fall into depression, and he went into hiding. Everyone close to him became worried. Lee-gun and his manager continued to search for Lee-sun. While reflecting on the situation, Lee-gun remembered what really happened. The two brothers had fought on a bridge, and Lee-sun, feeling like he was always in his brother's shadow, tried to end his own life. As Lee-gun tried to save his younger brother, they both fell into the river, with Lee-gun getting seriously injured. Fortunately, they both survived, but rumors began to spread that Lee-sun had tried to hurt his brother. Lee-gun believed these false rumors were started by someone with bad intentions toward them. On the other hand, Sae Yan was still determined to find her biological father. One day, she received a phone call from someone claiming to know about her dad. Overjoyed, Sae Yan eagerly prepared herself to meet him. She finally met with a man who seemed important at a restaurant, but once again, she was disappointed. It turned out that the man had been hired by Sae Yan's mother to pretend to be her father. Meanwhile, Lee Sin was hiding at a beach, disguised with a hat, sunglasses, and a jacket. One day, he saw a young boy being bullied. Lee Sin stepped in and helped the boy by giving his jacket to the bully. Without realizing it, Lee Sin left his wallet in the jacket, revealing his identity to the boy. Now without his wallet and feeling hungry, Lee Sin struggled to get by. He had no choice but to call Dr. Kyung for help. During the phone call, Dr. Kyung figured out where Lee Sin was hiding and when to find him. They had a private conversation, and Lee Sin opened up about feeling sad because he was always seen as living in Lee Goon's shadow. Despite this, Lee Sin was grateful for his brother's sacrifices. He told Dr. Kyung that being in his brother's shadow made him feel trapped, like he couldn't be himself. But after meeting Dr. Kyung, Lee Sin finally felt like he could be his own person. He confessed that he felt very comfortable around her because he truly loved her. On the other hand, Lee Goon also received information about Lee Sin's location from a teenager who found Lee Sin's wallet. Lee Goon immediately went to find his brother. When he finally spotted him, Lee Sin was sitting with Dr. Kyung, and seeing them together made Lee Goon extremely jealous, leading to a heated argument between the two brothers. At the hospital, Dr. Theo called to inform Dr. Kyung about the side effects seen in the test mouse used in the memory erasure experiment. Realizing the potential danger for Lee Goon, Dr. Kyung rushed to find him. When Dr. Kyung finally met Lee Goon, she apologized for everything. Their relationship seemed to improve, and they shared some romantic moments. After finding Lee Sin, he returned, and the public was buzzing about his comeback. Feeling exhausted from the pressure of being an athlete, Lee Sin decided to take a year off from his career. Meanwhile, Lee Goon and Dr. Kyung grew even closer, even going on a date at a restaurant. However, there was a hidden sadness in her heart. She knew that once the memory research was complete, Lee Goon would soon regain his memories of his true first love, who wasn't her. As for Sae Yan, she continued searching for information about her biological father. She eventually discovered an article with photos of her father and mother on a website. And Lee Goon, who was with Sae Yan at the time, also saw the news and secretly called a police officer. Sae Yan was overjoyed to finally learn who her real father was. Excited, she returned to Dr. Kyung's house. However, when she arrived, Sae Yan was shocked to find many bodyguards sent by her mother, ready to take her back to Italy. On the way to the airport, the car carrying Sae Yan and her mother hit a motorcyclist. While her mom and the bodyguards were distracted by the accident, Sae Yan managed to escape. She was almost caught again by the bodyguards, but the man who had been hit helped her run away. When the man took off his helmet, Sae Yan realized that he was her biological father, the person she had been searching for all along. Sae Yan spent happy days with her father, not realizing that he was actually a dangerous psychopath. Sometimes, he would act harshly and wouldn't let her use her phone. Meanwhile, Lee Goon received a call from the police about Sae Yan's father. It turned out that the man's name was Hyo Mong, a dangerous psychopath who had already committed several murders. In a secret room, Hyo Mong had many photos of people he planned to target, and with an angry look, he tore up a photo of Lee Sin. Sensing something was wrong, Lee Goon rushed to the hospital to find Dr. Kyung. There, he met Dr. Theo, who coldly told him that Lee Goon was just a research subject for Dr. Kyung's memory erasing project. Dr. Theo also revealed that Dr. Kyung was not Lee Goon's first love. Shocked by the truth, Lee Goon suddenly suffered a severe headache and passed out. After surviving the critical moment, his bad memories returned, making him weak and confused again, causing chaos like before. However, this time his parents were more understanding. They realized that their ambition had caused harm to their son's mental health by pressuring him too much. In the end, Lee Goon's family grew closer and supported each other more than ever. Meanwhile, Dr. Kyung felt guilty toward Lee Goon and decided to resign, stopping the memory erasing research. At her home, Sae Yan tried to find a way to contact someone while staying with her father. But every attempt failed. Sae Yan was eventually trapped and locked in a secret room by her father. In that room, she realized that her father was a murderer, and even worse, Lee Sin and Dr. Kyung were also his next targets. The scene then goes back to the past, when Sae Yan was still searching for her father. She arrived at an empty cabin and found a bracelet and a medal from one of her elementary school friends. At that moment, Hyomong almost attacked her from behind. However, when he realized it was Sae Yan, he stopped. From then on, Hyomong secretly followed her to protect her, even when Sae Yan attended her school reunion. During the reunion, Sae Yan hung the medal she found on the achievement tree. Lee Gun eventually found the medal he had been searching for. Excited, he rushed to find Sae Yan, but was shocked when he saw her kissing Lee Sin. At the same time, Hyomong witnessed the scene as well, including when Sae Yan and Lee Sin started arguing. Seeing the argument, Hyomong believed that Lee Sin was bullying Sae Yan and wanted to hurt him. The next day, Lee Gun was at the hospital checking on his pain, when suddenly, someone told him that Dr. Kyung had resigned. At that time, he learned that Dr. Kyung felt guilty about her experiment on him. It turns out, Dr. Kyung was also dealing with similar problems like Lee Gun and wanted to erase her bad memories too. When Dr. Kyung was a child, her father had conducted a similar experiment on a patient. Unfortunately, the experiment ended in tragedy, with the patient killing Dr. Kyung's father. That patient was none other than Hyomong, Sae Yan's father. After hearing this story, Lee Gun couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Kyung. Sweet memories between them kept replaying in his mind. At that time, Dr. Kyung had told Lee Sin that she never had the chance to open up to Lee Gun about her first love, who happened to be Sae Yan. Lee Sin confessed to Lee Gun that Lee Gun's first love was someone who was also close to him. Lee Gun thought that the girl might be Sae Yan, but at that moment, all he could think about was Dr. Kyung. After many years, Hyomong started stalking Dr. Kyung and even sent mysterious packages to her clinic. Later, Lee Gun was asked to give testimony about Dr. Kyung's experiment in front of other doctors. He explained that after the experiment, he felt like a different person, and when his bad memories returned, he felt extremely stressed. He advised against using the experiment on others. Hearing his testimony, Dr. Kyung accepted his opinion with an open heart and acknowledged her failure. Meanwhile, Sae Yan, trapped by her own father, desperately tried to escape. She recalled her childhood with Dr. Kyung, who always protected her from bullies. Remembering those moments gave Sae Yan the strength to break free from her father's hold. She remembered a credit card that Dr. Kyung had once given her. She used it to send out a signal, hoping someone would track her location. Dr. Kyung, noticing the signal, quickly told Lee Sin, who rushed to rescue Sae Yan. At the same time, Dr. Kyung received a mysterious message asking her to go to her clinic. Without thinking much, she hurried to her office. While Lee Sin successfully saved Sae Yan, Dr. Kyung found herself in danger. When she arrived at her clinic and opened the package on her desk, she was shocked. Inside was a doll she used to hold tightly during the tragic moment when she witnessed her father's death. Realizing the threat, Dr. Kyung understood she was in grave danger. But before she could act, Hyomong appeared, intending to harm her. In a terrifying moment, Dr. Kyung lost consciousness. When Hyomong was about to hurt Dr. Kyung, Lee Gun suddenly arrived to save the person he cared about. A fierce fight broke out, and soon after, the police came and arrested Hyomong. The man was shocked to see his daughter had escaped with Lee Sin. At that time, Hyomong felt deeply hurt when his daughter chose to side with Lee Sin and Madam Cho's family. Dr. Kyung was finally safe and taken to the hospital, where both Sae Yan's mother and Dr. Kyung's biological mother visited her. They started to reveal everything that had happened in the past. It turns out, Dr. Kyung's family and Sae Yan's family used to be very close. Back then, Sae Yan's mother and Madam Cho's family lived peacefully in a village. But that peace was shattered when they received news that Hyomong, who had mental issues, was searching for them. Upon hearing this, Dr. Kyung's mother panicked and tried to contact her husband, who was working at the time. Unfortunately, it was too late, as Hyomong had already killed Dr. Kyung's father. A flashback revealed that Lee Gun's first love wasn't Sae Yan, but actually Dr. Kyung. Someone had told this to Lee Gun. After realizing that his first love was Dr. Kyung, Lee Gun wanted to see her. However, he was heartbroken to find out that Dr. Kyung had moved abroad. 3 years passed, and both Dr. Kyung and Lee Gun became successful in their careers. Lee Goon received news that Dr. Kyung had returned to Korea. They both revisited the village where they first met as young lovers, but this time, they reunited as each other's last love. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is never trust someone who offers you a mystery package or kisses you out of nowhere, especially if their dad's a psycho. Oh, and always check who you're piggybacking before things get weird.